Blood splattered across expensive marble as Kang Jiho's fist connected with the man's jaw for the third time. The guards holding Derek upright barely flinched. They'd seen worse. Much worse. Jiho's knuckles were raw, his tailored suit jacket discarded somewhere in the alley behind the restaurant, his white shirt sleeves rolled up and stained red. "I asked you a question." Jiho's voice was ice. "Who sent you?" Derek spat blood onto the ground, his lips split open, one eye already swelling shut. "Nobody sent me, you psycho! She's my girlfriend!" "Ex-girlfriend." Jiho grabbed Derek by the throat, slamming him against the brick wall. "And you're lying!" This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. 3 hours ago, Jiho had been nervous. Actually nervous. For the first time in a decade, his hands had trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. And Sungmin had laughed at him. "The bastard. Boss, you're sweating. It's just dinner." But it wasn't just dinner. It was Maya. And Maya was different. Let me take you back to where this all started. 6 weeks before everything went to hell. Maya Williams had been in Seoul for 8 months, and she was finally starting to feel like herself again. The bookstore where she worked smelled like old paper and green tea, and her coworkers didn't ask too many questions about why a Black American woman with a literature degree was shelving books instead of teaching. They didn't know about Derek. They didn't know about the nights she'd spent walking on eggshells, about how he'd check her phone while she slept, about how "I love you" had slowly transformed into "You can't leave me." But she had left. 3 weeks ago, she'd packed a single suitcase while he was at work, blocked his number, and moved to a tiny apartment on the other side of Seoul. Starting over. Again. The bruise on her wrist had faded to a yellowish green. She'd told herself it was an accident, that he hadn't meant to grab her that hard when she'd tried, to leave the apartment to meet Sarah for coffee. That was the moment she knew. Not the yelling, not the constant surveillance, but that bruise, and the way he'd apologized afterward with tears in his eyes, swearing it would never happen again while simultaneously explaining why it was actually her fault for making him worry. She'd left 2 days later. "Still single?" Mrs. Kang asked in Korean, her eyes twinkling as she approached the counter with a stack of books. Maya had come to love Halmioni, as she insisted on being called. The older woman visited twice a week, always impeccably dressed, always kind, always seeming to see straight through Maya's carefully constructed walls. Maya laughed, responding in careful Korean. "I just got out of something, taking time for myself." Halmioni studied her with the intensity of someone who saw too much. "Good men exist, you know. My grandson, for example." "Are you trying to set me up?" "Would that be so terrible?" The old woman's smile was sly. "He's handsome, successful, and most importantly, he treats women with respect. His father taught him that before he died, even though my son was not always a good man himself. But he knew how a man should treat a woman." Maya felt something twist in her chest. Respect. Such a simple word. Such an impossible thing to find. "I'm really not looking for anything right now." "I understand, but if you change your mind?" Halmioni slid a piece of paper across the counter with a phone number written in elegant script. "No pressure. Just think about it. He's lonely, that boy. Has been for so long. And I think perhaps you understand what it means to be lonely even when you're surrounded by people." The words hit closer than Maya wanted to admit. She took the paper, folding it carefully, and slipping it into her pocket. "No promises." "No promises," Halmioni agreed. "Just possibilities." That night, alone in her apartment with instant ramyeon and a glass of wine, Maya stared at the number for 20 minutes. It was stupid. She didn't know this man, and she'd just escaped one relationship that had nearly destroyed her sense of self. The last thing she needed was to jump into something new. But Halmioni had kind eyes, and Maya was so tired of being alone, of being afraid, of second-guessing every instinct she had. She sent a simple text. "Your grandmother is very persistent. This is Maya from the bookstore." The response came 30 seconds later. She's unstoppable when she decides something. I'm Jiho. I apologize in advance for whatever she told you about me. Maya smiled despite herself. She said you're handsome and successful. She left out stubborn and terrible at cooking. Deal breakers, both of them. I was afraid of that. 3 hours later, they were still texting. Maya learned that Jiho preferred tea to coffee, that he'd studied business in the States but came back to Seoul after his father died, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a motorcycle accident when he was 19. She told him about her literature degree, about teaching English for a year before deciding she hated it, about how she'd always dreamed of writing but was too afraid to try. "What are you afraid of?" he asked. She stared at the question for a long time before answering. That I'll fail, that I'll discover I'm not as good as I think I am, that everything I've sacrificed to be here will have been for nothing. And if you succeed? I don't let myself think about that. It feels like tempting fate. Maybe fate wants to be tempted. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get wild. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. And just like that, it started. Over the next 5 weeks, they texted constantly. Late-night conversations that stretched until 3 in the morning. Photos of terrible instant meals they both survived on despite having money for better. Jiho asking about her day at the bookstore, genuinely interested in the customers she dealt with and the books she recommended. Maya asking vague questions about his import business that he deflected with practiced ease, though she noticed he never quite lied, just redirected. "What do you actually do?" Maya asked one night during their first phone call, her voice slightly wine-drunk and brave. His voice was deeper than she'd expected, with a slight rasp that sent shivers down her spine. There was a pause. In his office, Jiho stared at the spreadsheet in front of him, detailing protection payments from the West District, and felt the familiar weight of his double life pressing down on his chest. The numbers were clean, professional, and represented dozens of businesses paying him money so nothing bad would happen to them. It was extortion dressed up in expensive suits and polite language. Import and export. It's boring. Try me. I'd rather hear about your day. He was good at deflection. He'd had years of practice. His father had taught him young, never volunteer information, never give more than necessary, always control the narrative. My day was fine. A customer asked if we had any books about Korean gangsters, and I thought of you. Jiho's blood ran cold. Why? Because you're so secretive. I'm kidding. You're obviously not a gangster. You use proper grammar in texts, and you said please when you asked me to send that photo of the sunset from Namsan Tower. He laughed, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. Obviously, but the comment unsettled him. He hung up 20 minutes later and sat in his office looking out over Seoul's glittering skyline. What was he doing? He'd built his life on secrets and violence and control. He'd taken over his father's empire at 25 and spent 10 years consolidating power, eliminating rivals, building an organization that ran on fear and respect in equal measure. He couldn't bring someone like Maya into this world. She was light and books and laughter. He was darkness and blood and calculated cruelty when necessary. He should end it. Send a polite text. Make an excuse. Let her move on to someone who could give her a normal life. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Sorry if I made things weird with the gangster comment. You're probably just a very dedicated stapler salesman or something equally mundane. Good night, Jiho. He smiled despite himself and typed back. Good night, Maya. Dream of staplers. The sexiest of office supplies. He didn't end it. Sarah video called at midnight Seoul time, which meant Maya's best friend was on her lunch break in New York. Maya was trying on her third dress, none of them feeling right. Too formal, too casual, too trying too hard. So you're really meeting him? In person? Sarah's dark eyes were concerned on the screen. It's Valentine's Day. He asked me to dinner. Maya held up a simple black dress. This one? To funeral. Try the blue. And Maya? Seriously? You still don't know what he actually does for a living? He's private. I respect that. Girl, Sarah's face was serious now. Korean men with money and secrets. I'm just saying, be careful. You just got away from one controlling asshole. Don't walk right into another situation. Maya's hand went unconsciously to her wrist where the bruise had been. Jiho's not like Derek. You don't know that. You've never even met him. I know how he makes me feel. Safe. Seen. Like I matter. Derek made you feel like that too. At first? The words hit like a slap, because they were true. Derek had been charming at first, attentive, always wanting to know where she was and what she was doing, because he cared so much. It wasn't until 6 months in that caring had morphed into surveillance, that protecting had become controlling. I'm being careful, Maya said quietly. I promise. Okay, but if anything feels off, you call me, immediately. I don't care what time it is. Care what? Here, I will. And send me his address, and a photo, and his full name. I want receipts. Maya smiled. You sound like you're planning a background check. I already did one. Kang Jiho, 35, CEO of Kang Enterprises. On paper, he looks legitimate. Import, export, some real estate holdings, a few restaurants. But Maya, there are gaps. Times where he just disappears from public record. And his father, Kang Jun-ho, was linked to organized crime before he died. Maya's stomach dropped. What? I'm not saying Jiho is involved in anything. I'm saying be careful, that's all. After Sarah hung up, Maya sat on her bed with the blue dress in her lap and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. But then her phone buzzed with a text from Jiho. I'm nervous. Is that pathetic? I'm 35 years old and nervous about a date. She typed back, I've tried on 6 dresses, so if you're pathetic, so am I. I'm sure you look beautiful in all of them. How do you know? I could have terrible fashion sense. Do you? The worst, I once wore Crocs to a wedding. Now I'm even more nervous. I'll have to live up to the Crocs standard. She was smiling as she put on the blue dress. Maybe Sarah was right to worry. Maybe this was stupid and reckless, and she was ignoring red flags because she was lonely. But for the first time in months, she felt like herself again. Like Maya, not Derek's girlfriend, not a woman recovering from trauma. Just Maya who liked books and bad jokes and men who admitted to being nervous. She'd be careful. But she'd also be brave. The restaurant was more expensive than anywhere Maya had ever eaten. The hostess led her to a private room where Halmione was already waiting, and the old woman's face lit up when Maya entered. She wore a traditional hanbok in deep purple, elegant and regal. You're even more beautiful than I remembered, Halmione said warmly, pulling her into a hug that smelled like jasmine and something else. Something that reminded Maya of her own grandmother who'd passed 5 years ago. That same combination of expensive perfume and unconditional love. They talked easily while waiting. Halmione asked about her family in the States, about her studies, about why she'd come to Seoul. Maya gave the sanitized version. Wanted adventure, needed a change, got a job at the bookstore. She didn't mention Derek, didn't mention that she'd chosen Seoul because it was far enough away that he'd never think to look for her here. Didn't mention the nights she still woke up from nightmares, where he was standing over her bed, demanding to know why she'd left. And your family? Halmione asked. They must miss you. My mom does. She calls twice a week and pretends she's not worried. My dad thinks I'm being irresponsible, that I should have stayed in New York and gotten a real job. Maya smiled, though it hurt a little. They don't really understand why I needed to leave. Sometimes the people who love us can't see what we need. They only see what they fear. The wisdom in those words settled over Maya like a warm blanket. Did Jiho's father understand? What he needed? Halmione's expression shifted, became more guarded. My son was a complicated man. He loved Jiho fiercely, but he also shaped him into something necessary, something hard. When Junho died, Jiho had to become someone he perhaps didn't want to be. What do you mean? Before Halmayoni could answer, the door opened. Kang Jiho stepped inside and Maya's breath caught. Halmayoni hadn't lied about handsome. He was tall, lean, sharp-featured with dark eyes that found hers immediately and held. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent, but it was the way he moved that caught her attention. Controlled, precise, like someone used to being watched. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The 5 weeks of texts, the late-night calls, the careful construction of who they wanted to be for each other, all of it crystallized into this single moment of recognition. "Sorry I'm late," Jiho said, his voice deeper in person than on the phone, that rasp even more pronounced. "It's okay. Your grandmother has been telling me embarrassing stories about you." Maya was pleased her voice came out steady. Halmayoni laughed, switching to Korean. "She's even more beautiful than I said, isn't she?" Jiho responded in Korean, still looking at Maya. "Yes, more beautiful than I imagined." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "I understood that." His smile was small but genuine, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like relief. "Good. I'm glad." Dinner was perfect. The food was incredible. Course after course of delicate, artfully arranged dishes that Halmayoni explained in detail, but Maya barely tasted it. She was too focused on Jiho, on the way he listened when she talked, really listened, leaning forward slightly with his full attention. On the way, he was clearly nervous, though he tried to hide it. On the way, his fingers tapped against his knee under the table in a rhythmic pattern that suggested this was a nervous habit. On the guards, she noticed stationed discreetly outside the door in the corridor, their presence barely visible, but unmistakably there. "Your grandmother talks about you like you hung the moon," Maya said at one point, watching Jiho's expression soften when he looked at Halmayoni. "She's biased," Halmayoni interjected. "I'm honest. You've never brought a woman to meet me, not once in 10 years. The air shifted slightly. Maya looked at Jiho with new curiosity. "Really? 10 years?" "I've been busy." He was deflecting again, and she could feel it, could see the walls coming up. "Import-export keeps you that occupied?" His smile was rueful, tinged with something that might have been regret. "Something like that." Halmayoni excused herself after the main course with a knowing smile, claiming she needed to speak with the chef about dessert. The moment she left, the energy in the room changed. Suddenly, it was just the two of them, and the weight of 5 weeks of building anticipation pressed down on the space between them. "I'm glad you're real," Maya said quietly. Jiho looked startled. "What? I kept thinking maybe I'd imagined you, that I'd created this perfect person in my head, and the real you would be different." "I'm not perfect, Maya. Far from it. I didn't say you were perfect. I said you were real." She reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, he took her hand. His palm was warm, slightly calloused in a way that didn't match his expensive suit. "I've spent the last few months not trusting my instincts, second-guessing everything I feel. But sitting here with you, I think maybe I'm allowed to trust myself again." Jiho's grip tightened on her hand. "You should always trust yourself." "That's easy to say." "No, it's not. It's the hardest thing in the world." His eyes were intense, and she felt like he was seeing straight through her carefully constructed facade. "But you're stronger than you think. Halmayoni told me you came to Seoul alone, started over completely. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." They talked for another hour, and Maya felt the last of her walls starting to crumble. Jiho told her about growing up in Seoul, about his mother who died when he was young, about how Halmayoni had essentially raised him. He was careful, she noticed, when talking about his father. Mentioned him only in passing, always with a certain tension around his eyes. "Your father and you weren't close?" she asked gently. "We were. Very close. but he wanted me to be someone I'm not sure I wanted to be. Jiho looked down at their joined hands. I spent my whole life trying to be what he needed. And then he died, and I realized I didn't know who I was without his expectations. Did you figure it out? I'm still trying. The vulnerability in his admission made Maya's heart ache. Here was this powerful, controlled man admitting he was still trying to figure out who he was. It felt like a gift, that honesty. After dinner, as plates were being cleared, Jiho stood. His hands were shaking slightly. Maya could see it, and her heart started beating faster. Halmayoni had returned at some point, settling back into her chair with a satisfied smile. The guards by the door straightened slightly, as if they knew what was coming. Maya, Jiho's voice was steady despite his hands. I know this is only our first time meeting face to face, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You're brilliant. You're kind. You challenge me and make me laugh, usually at the same time. And when you send me photos of the sunset with terrible captions, it's the best part of my day. He pulled out a bouquet of roses. Red, classic, beautiful. And Maya felt tears prick her eyes. The romance of it, the old-fashioned gesture from this modern man, undid something in her chest. So, I'm just going to ask, even though it's probably too soon and definitely too presumptuous. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Will you be my Valentine? Maya's smile was so wide it hurt. She could feel Halmayoni glowing beside her, could see the guards grinning like they'd been in on this plan. This was it. This was the moment she said yes to something good, something real, something... Are you fucking kidding me? Everyone turned. Derek stood in the doorway, shoving past a waiter who tried to stop him. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes wild with something that might have been anger, or might have been desperation, or might have been something darker. His shirt was buttoned wrong. He smelled like alcohol and sweat and obsession. Maya's entire body went cold, every muscle locking up in the way they always did when he got like this. Derek, her voice, came out as a whisper, small and scared, and she hated herself for it. How did you... 3 weeks, Maya. 3 weeks, and you're already with someone else? He was advancing into the room, and she could see he'd been drinking heavily. His movements were uncoordinated, aggressive. I've been calling, texting. You blocked me, so I came to your apartment. Your neighbor said you were on a date. His eyes swung to Jiho with pure hatred. So this is the guy? This is who you've been cheating on me with? Maya stood, her legs shaking so badly she had to grip the table for support. We broke up, Derek. You need to leave. We didn't break up. He was getting louder, more aggressive, and the guards were moving closer but waiting for some signal. You left. You left and blocked me without even talking to me. Without even giving me a chance to fix things. 2 years together, and you throw me away for what? Some pretty boy with money? Some Asian guy who probably can't even... Stop. Maya's voice was stronger now, anger burning through the fear. Just stop. But Derek was on a roll, the way he always got when he'd been drinking and felt wronged. I gave you everything. I loved you more than anyone ever will. And this is how you repay me? By running away and replacing me like I meant nothing? Jiho rose slowly. Everything about him changed. The nervous suitor vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous that made the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. It was like watching a mask fall away to reveal something predatory beneath. The change was so complete, so absolute, that Maya felt a spike of fear that had nothing to do with Derek. You need to leave, now. Jiho's voice was completely different. Flat, emotionless. The voice of someone who'd said these words before and watched men fail to listen. Derek laughed, bitter and sharp. Oh, so he speaks English. Look, man, I don't know what she told you, but Maya's a liar. She's good at playing the victim, making you think she's all innocent, but... Derek, please, just go. Maya's voice was breaking. She could feel the situation spiraling, could feel the violence building in the air like electricity before a storm. You moved on fast, didn't you? Makes me wonder how long you two were talking before you left. How long you were cheating on me. Derek's face twisted into something ugly, something Maya had seen before in private moments that left her shaking. How long were you fucking him while you were still sleeping in my bed? You whore! He didn't finish the word. Jiho moved like lightning. One moment he was standing across the table. The next his hand was around Derek's throat, slamming him into the wall with enough force to crack the decorative paneling. A framed piece of calligraphy crashed to the floor. Derek's feet were barely touching the ground, his face turning red as he clawed at Jiho's grip. The violence of it was shocking, precise, the movement of someone who'd done this many times before. You will apologize to my wife. Jiho's voice was deadly quiet, and Maya heard the unspoken threat in every syllable. The room went silent. Even Derek stopped struggling, shock replacing rage on his face. Wife? You're not even... I said apologize. Jiho's grip tightened, and Derek made a choking sound. Halmayoni spoke calmly in Korean, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Take him outside, quietly, don't damage him where it will show. The guards moved in immediately, professional and efficient, pulling Derek away from Jiho and dragging him toward the exit. Derek was struggling, shouting, his voice getting higher and more desperate. This isn't over! Maya, you think you know this guy? You have no idea what he is! You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into! He's a fucking gangster! His father was... The door closed, cutting off Derek's voice mid-sentence. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya was shaking. Not crying, but her whole body was trembling with adrenaline and shock and something that might have been fear. She looked at Jiho, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man who'd sent her sweet texts about sunsets had just slammed another human being into a wall with the ease of someone who did it regularly. The man who'd admitted to being nervous had just threatened violence with empty eyes. You called me your wife, she said, her voice barely audible. Jiho turned to her, and his expression immediately softened, the dangerous man disappearing as quickly as he'd appeared. But Maya had seen it now, couldn't unsee it. Yes, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have... Who are you? The question came out sharper than she intended. Really, who are you? Halmayoni stood, moving to Maya's side. She tried to take Maya's hand, but Maya pulled away. The old woman's expression was understanding, sad. He couldn't let that man disrespect you, not in front of me, not in front of his men, you understand? No. Maya's voice was stronger now, anger replacing shock. I don't understand any of this. I don't understand why there are armed guards at a Valentine's Day dinner. I don't understand how Jiho moved like that, like violence is second nature. I don't understand what Derek meant about his father. And I really don't understand why you just ordered them to hurt him where it won't show. The last part came out as an accusation directed at Halmayoni, and the old woman had the grace to look ashamed. Jiho took a step toward Maya, and she took a step back. Something flashed across his face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition that this was exactly what he'd feared would happen. Let me handle this first, then we'll talk. I promise you the truth. All of it. The truth, Maya laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical even to her own ears. Which truth? The one where you're a legitimate businessman? Or the one where you're exactly what Derek said you are? Jiho flinched. Maya, just go. Deal with Derek. I'll wait here. She sat down heavily in her chair, her legs finally giving out. I'll wait for the truth. He left, and Maya was alone with Halmayoni and the ruins of what should have been a perfect evening. The roses sat on the table, mocking her with their beauty. She'd been about to say yes, had been seconds away from choosing this man, this life, without knowing anything real about either. Halmayoni sat beside her, giving her space but staying close. Scared? Terrified? Good. Fear means you're smart. The old woman's grip was surprisingly strong when she finally took Maya's hand, and this time Maya didn't pull away. But I'll tell you this. My grandson has done many things in his life. Some of them I'm proud of. Some I pray he'll find redemption for. But I have never, not once, seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. How do you know that means anything? How do you know I'm not just another thing he wants to control? The words hurt to say, because part of her was already making excuses, already trying to rationalize what she'd seen. Because I know my grandson, and I know what happens to people he wants to control. Halmeoni's eyes were sad. They disappear, Maya. They don't get roses and nervous confessions. They get silence and cold efficiency. The fact that he brought you here, that he let you see him vulnerable, that he called you his wife in front of his men, that means something. That means everything. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think Maya should do. Should she run or should she stay? Let me know your thoughts. Outside in the alley, Derek was on his knees between two guards. Blood dripped from his nose where one of them had hit him during the struggle. Jiho walked out slowly, deliberately, unbuttoning his cufflinks and rolling up his sleeves. This was familiar territory. This was who he'd been for 10 years. Kang Jiho, enforcer first and businessman second, the man who solved problems with violence when necessary. Who sent you? Jiho's voice was businesslike, detached. What? Nobody sent me. You just happened to find her here, at a private restaurant she'd never been to before, in a private room that was booked under a false name. On the one night in 3 weeks she leaves her apartment. Jiho crouched down to Derek's level, studying him the way someone might study an insect. Try again. And this time, understand that my patience has limits. Derek's face changed, fear creeping in as he realized his mistake. Her neighbor told me. Her neighbor doesn't know she's here. We checked. So I'll ask one more time. Who sent you? One of the guards had Derek's phone out, scrolling through it. He showed something to Jiho, whose expression darkened significantly. Park Minho, Jiho said quietly in Korean. The guard nodded. Text messages going back 2 days. Looks like Minho's been feeding him information on where Maya would be tonight, Jiho grabbed. Oh, Derek's face forcing him to meet his eyes. Minho paid you to follow her, didn't he? To interrupt tonight? I don't know what your... Jiho's punch was precise, controlled, catching Derek in the solar plexus, hard enough to double him over, gasping, but not hard enough to cause serious damage. Don't lie to me. Okay, okay. Derek was crying now, snot and tears mixing with the blood. He contacted me on Facebook 3 days ago. Said he had information about Maya, that she was in trouble. He sent me money, told me where she'd be tonight. Said if I really loved her, I'd come save her from you. How much? $5,000. Jiho stood, his mind racing. Minho had been planning this, had found Derek somehow, and manipulated him perfectly. The jealous ex-boyfriend was the perfect weapon. Emotional, irrational, publicly sympathetic. If Derek had managed to make a bigger scene, if he'd recorded it, if it had gone viral, it would have been exactly the kind of embarrassment that weakened Jiho's position. Made him look vulnerable, made other rivals think he was distracted by a woman. Here's what's going to happen, Jiho said, his voice cold. You're going to leave Seoul. Tonight. You're going to go back to America, and you're going to forget Maya exists. If you contact her again, if you post about her online, if you even think about her, I won't be this merciful. Merciful? Derek laughed bitterly through his tears. You call this? Jiho punched him again, harder this time. Derek dropped, blood pooling under his face. Yes, I call this merciful. Because what I want to do to you and what I'm actually doing are very different things. You put your hands on her. It wasn't a question. Jiho had seen the way Maya flinched when Derek moved toward her, had seen the ghost of old fear in her eyes. You hurt her, and part of me wants to make you understand what that feels like. Derek looked up at him, and for the first time seemed to grasp exactly how much danger he was in. I loved her. No, you didn't. You owned her. There's a difference. Jiho straightened his cuffs, his moment of rage passing. Put him on the next flight to LAX. I don't care what it costs, and make sure he understands that if he comes back, we'll find out. And next time, I won't stop myself. Sungmin emerged from the shadows where he'd been waiting. And Park Minho? He's testing me. Wanted to embarrass me in front of Halmayoni and Maya. Wanted to show that I'm distracted. Jiho looked back at the restaurant, where Maya was waiting for explanations he didn't know how to give. Let him think it worked. Pull back our men from the West District border. Make it look like we're consolidating, protecting what we have instead of expanding. That's not like you. I know, that's the point. Minho expects me to retaliate immediately. We're going to do the opposite. Let him overextend while we prepare. Jiho started walking back towards Hutli restaurant, then paused. And Sungmin? I want surveillance on all of Maya's regular locations. Bookstore, apartment, the coffee shop she goes to on Sunday mornings. If Minho knows enough about her to set this up, he knows enough to try again. You care about her. It wasn't a question, but Jiho answered anyway. Yes. Boss, if you care about her, you need to either bring her all the way into this life or let her go. Half measures will get her killed. I know. Back inside the restaurant, Maya was still sitting with Halmayoni, the old woman talking softly in a mixture of Korean and English about her late husband, about how love was never simple, about how sometimes the right person came wrapped in complications we never expected. When Jiho entered, Maya looked up, and he saw the war happening behind her eyes. Fear and attraction, curiosity and self-preservation, trust and doubt. He wanted to erase the fear, wanted to promise her that she was safe, that he'd never let anyone hurt her. But he'd learned long ago that promises meant nothing in his world. Only actions mattered. He sat across from her, keeping the table between them, giving her space. Your ex is being sent back to America tonight. He won't bother you again. Did you hurt him? Maya's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Yes. She closed her eyes briefly. How badly? Not as badly as I wanted to, not as badly as he deserved. Jiho watched her process this. He'll be fine. Bruised ego more than anything else. And the truth? You promised me the truth. This was it. The moment where he either lost her or bound her to him irrevocably. Jiho took a breath and started talking. My family controls territory in Seoul. Shipping routes, entertainment districts, protection for businesses that need it. Some of what we do is legitimate. Real estate, restaurants, actual import-export. Some of it isn't. We collect money from people who don't want trouble. We resolve disputes that the police can't or won't handle. We move things across borders that aren't supposed to be moved. You're a gangster. Maya's voice was flat. Yes. My father was before me, and his father before him. I took over when my father was killed 5 years ago, by a rival organization. I was 25, and had spent my whole life preparing for a role I never actually wanted. And Park Minho, the person Derek mentioned, is the head of a rival organization. We've been in conflict for years over territory and influence. He paid Derek to interrupt tonight because he wanted to embarrass me, to show my men that I'm distracted by a woman and therefore vulnerable. Jiho met her eyes. Which means you're in danger now. His people know who you are. They know I care about you. I'm bait. No. You're a person I care about who is now caught up in something you never asked for. The distinction mattered to him, even if it didn't to her. I should have stayed away, should have ignored Halmayoni's matchmaking and let you live your life in peace. But I was selfish. I wanted... He trailed off, not sure how to articulate what he'd wanted. Connection. Normalcy. Someone who saw him as just Jiho, not Kang Jiho the enforcer. Maya was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was small. Derek was right, wasn't he? When he said, I don't know what I've gotten myself into. Yes. Are you going to let me leave? If I walk out right now, will you stop me? The question hung in the air. Halmione was watching him, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. The guards outside had orders to protect Maya, but Jiho hadn't specified from what. If she tried to leave and he stopped her, he'd become exactly what Derek had been, someone who controlled her choices through force. No, Jiho said finally. I won't stop you. If you want to leave, you can leave. I'll make sure you get home safely. And I'll make sure Minho's people don't come near you, but I won't force you to stay. Even though that makes me more vulnerable? If I leave without your protection? Even then, because forcing you to stay for your own safety makes me your jailer. Not your... He couldn't finish. Boyfriend seemed too trivial. Partner, too presumptuous. He had no words for what he wanted them to be. Maya stood, and Jiho's heart sank. This was it. She was leaving. He'd known it would happen, had prepared himself for it, but the reality still cut deeper than he'd expected. But she didn't walk toward the door. She walked around the table and stopped in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and citrusy that didn't match the heavy moment. I left Derek because he was controlling, she said quietly. Because he couldn't let me make my own choices. Because I felt suffocated every single day. Because he made me feel small and scared and like I couldn't trust my own judgment. I know. So here's what I need from you. I need complete and honesty. No more vague answers about import-export. No more deflection. If I ask you something, you tell me the truth, even if you think it will scare me off. Okay? And I need you to never, ever make decisions for me. Not about my safety. Not about what I should know. Not about anything. We talk. We decide together. I'm not someone you protect like a helpless thing. I'm someone who chooses to be here, and there's a difference. Jiho stood, and they were inches apart. Yes, there is. And if this gets too dangerous, if I decide I can't handle your world, you let me go. No guilt trips, no making me feel responsible for your happiness. Clean break. I promise. Then, she took a shaky breath. Then my answer is yes. I'll be your Valentine, and your partner, and whatever else this becomes. But on my terms, Jiho. Always on my terms. He wanted to kiss her, wanted to pull her close and promise that everything would be fine. But he just promised honesty. And the truth was that everything might not be fine. So instead, he took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Partners, he said. Partners. Halmione, who'd been quietly watching this entire exchange, stood with a satisfied smile. Good. Now, that's settled. Let's have dessert. Maya, dear, you've barely eaten anything. And the chef made your favorite, red bean pastries. How did you know my favorite? Maya asked, startled. Halmione's smile was mysterious. I pay attention. The rest of the evening passed in a strange sort of normalcy. They ate dessert. Halmione told embarrassing stories about Jiho as a child, his fear of dogs until he was 12, his terrible poetry phase at 14, the time he tried to run away from home and made it 3 blocks before getting lost. Jiho protested weakly, but let his grandmother talk, and Maya watched the interplay between them with growing affection. This was the man who'd sent her sweet texts. This was the man who admitted to being nervous. The violence was real, but so was this. The question was whether she could reconcile the two. When Jiho's driver took them back to Maya's apartment, Sungmin was in the front seat, professional and silent. Maya noticed the way Jiho's men watched them. The way they nodded was something that looked like respect when they saw her and Jiho holding hands in the back seat. They approve, Jiho said quietly. Of me? Of the fact that I'm happy. Some of them have been with me since I took over. They've watched me become colder, more focused on business and less on everything else. Seeing me smile again, It matters to them. No pressure, Maya said wryly. He smiled. No pressure. At her apartment building, Jiho walked her to her door. The hallway was narrow and slightly shabby, completely unlike the expensive restaurant they'd just left. Maya was suddenly self-conscious about her tiny studio, her second-hand furniture, the gap between their worlds made visible in peeling wallpaper and flickering fluorescent lights. I'll have someone watching the building, Jiho said. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Maya wanted to protest, but she'd promised to let him be honest about the dangers. Okay. And I'd like to see you tomorrow, if you're willing. I work until 6. I'll pick you up. They stood in awkward silence, and Maya was suddenly aware of how the evening should have ended versus how it actually had. There should have been a kiss, sweet and tentative, full of promise. Instead, there was the weight of secrets revealed and dangers acknowledged. I'm glad you said yes, Jiho said finally, even after everything. I'm glad I said yes too. I think. She smiled to show she was partly joking. He left, and Maya went inside, locking the door and leaning against it. Her hands were still shaking. She looked at her phone. 17 missed calls from Sarah, along with a string of increasingly frantic texts. The last one read, "If you don't call me in the next hour, I'm calling the embassy," Maya called. "Oh, thank God," Sarah answered immediately. "I've been losing my mind. How did it go?" "Wait, stupid question. Tell me everything." Maya sank onto her bed and told her. Everything. The perfect dinner, Derek's interruption, the violence, the truth about Jiho's organization, the conversation afterward, her decision to stay. Sarah was silent for a long moment after Maya finished. "You're staying with the gangster." "He's more than that." "I'm sure he is, but Maya, he's also definitely that. You saw him hurt Derek." "Derek deserved it. Maybe. Probably. But that's not the point. The point is that this man you're falling for is capable of violence, professional violence, and you're choosing to be with him anyway." Maya closed her eyes. "I know it sounds crazy. It sounds terrifying, but I trust you, and if you say he's worth the risk, then I believe you. Just promise me you'll be careful. Promise me that if things get scary, you'll leave. Don't stay. Because you feel responsible for his happiness, or because you think you can fix him. I promise." "And Maya, for what it's worth, Derek's been posting on Facebook, saying you've been kidnapped, that he tried to rescue you, but some Korean gang stopped him. He's got a whole GoFundMe going to save you." "What?" "Yeah, it's gotten weirdly viral. Last I checked, he'd raised like $20,000. Maya felt sick. Of course Derek would do this. Of course he'd turn her leaving into a drama where he was the hero and she was the damsel in distress. "I need to make a statement or something. Tell people I'm fine. Do you want me to handle it? I can post from your account. Make it clear you're safe and he's lying." "No, I should do it. He's my mess to clean up." After hanging up with Sarah, Maya spent an hour crafting a careful post on social media. She didn't mention Jiho directly, didn't explain why she'd left Derek or where she was now. Just a simple statement. "I'm safe and happy in Seoul. Any claims that I've been kidnapped or need rescuing are false. Derek and I broke up weeks ago, and I've moved on. Please respect my privacy." She posted it, then turned off her phone before she could see the inevitable explosion of responses. The next morning, Maya woke to her apartment being watched. She couldn't see the guards, but she could feel them, a presence just outside her awareness that should have been creepy, but instead felt oddly comforting. She went to work, and life continued with a surreal normalcy. Customers asked for book recommendations. Her coworker complained about his boyfriend. The elderly man who came in every Tuesday showed up right on schedule. But everything felt different now. Maya found herself watching the street through the bookstore window, wondering if Park Min-ho's people were out there, wondering if Jiho was thinking about her, wondering if she'd made the right choice or a catastrophically stupid one. Jiho picked her up at 6, on the dot, and they went for a walk along the Han River. It was cold, the wind cutting through Maya's jacket, but she didn't want to be somewhere private yet. Needed the openness, the safety of public space. "Tell me about Park Min-ho," she said as they walked. "Why does he hate you?" Jiho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "When I took over my father's organization, I made changes. My father ruled through fear and violence. If someone crossed him, he made an example of them. Public, brutal. It kept people in line, but it also made enemies." "And you're different?" "I try to be. I prefer negotiation to violence when possible. I honor agreements. I don't hurt people unnecessarily." He paused. "But that makes me seem weak to men like the Minho. They see restraint as vulnerability." "So he's testing you." "He's trying to prove that my way doesn't work. That eventually, I'll have to become my father to survive. And if I do, he wins. If I don't, he takes my territory. Piece by piece." Maya processed this. "That's why Derek showing up was so perfect. If you'd overreacted, if you'd killed him, or caused a huge public scene, you'd look out of control. Weak." "Exactly. And if I'd done nothing, let him disrespect you in front of my men, I'd look weak for different reasons." Jiho stopped walking, turning to face her. "Minho was right about one thing. You are my vulnerability now. The fact that I care about you gives him leverage." "So what do we do?" "We're careful. We don't hide because that would signal fear, but we don't take unnecessary risks either. And we trust that my men are better than his." They walked in silence for a while longer. Maya wanted to ask more questions about how many people Jiho had hurt, about whether he'd ever killed anyone, about what exactly his organization did that was illegal. But she could see the weight of the conversation on him, could see that he was trying to be honest while also not destroying whatever image of him she still held. "Tell me something good," she said finally. "Something that has nothing to do with territories, or rivals, or violence." Jiho smiled, and it transformed his face. "When I was 8, Halmeoni took me to a bookstore in Insadong. It was raining, and we were killing time before meeting my father. She told me I could pick any book I wanted, and I chose one that was way too advanced for me, some historical novel about the Joseon dynasty. Could you read it? Not even close. But I was determined. Spent 3 months working through it with a dictionary. Halmeoni helped me with the words I couldn't figure out. By the time I finished, I'd fallen in love with reading, with the idea that books could take you somewhere else, make you someone else, even temporarily. Is that why your grandmother comes to my bookstore? She's trying to give you something you lost? Probably. She's subtle like that." Maya leaned into him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. For a moment, they were just two people on a winter evening, watching the river flow past and the city lights reflect on dark water. The violence and danger felt far away, manageable. "I'm scared," Maya admitted quietly, "of getting hurt, of making the same mistake I made with Derek, of falling for someone who seems perfect but isn't. I'm not perfect, Maya, not even close. I know, but you might be perfect for me, and that's what scares me most." He kissed the top of her head, and Maya felt something settle in her chest. This was right. It was dangerous and complicated and probably stupid, but it was right. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what you want to see next. Should we continue Maya and Jiho's story? Let me know. The next week passed in a strange sort of bliss. Jiho picked Maya up every evening after work, and they explored Seoul together. Quiet restaurants, art galleries, a midnight street food tour that left them both laughing and overfed. He introduced her to his world slowly, carefully, took her to one of his legitimate businesses, a high-end restaurant in Gangnam, where the staff greeted him with deep bows and genuine affection. Showed her the office where he ran the legal side of his empire, introduced her to Sungmin officially as his second-in-command. "She seems good for you, boss," Sungmin said when Maya was out of earshot, admiring the view from Jiho's office window. "She is." Park Minho's been quiet. Too quiet. I know. He's planning something. I know that too. Maya turned from the window, and Jiho changed the subject smoothly, asking if she wanted to see the new art installation at the Seoul Museum of Modern Art. But she'd seen the tension in his face, the quick shift from dangerous to attentive. She was learning to read him, to see the man beneath the careful control. That night, lying in bed in her apartment with Jiho beside her, their relationship moving faster than was probably wise but slower than her heart wanted, Maya asked the question she'd been avoiding. Have you ever killed anyone? Jiho went very still. In the darkness, she couldn't see his face, but she felt the way his breathing changed. Yes. How many? Do you really want to know? I asked, didn't I? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. 3 people. 2 were self-defense, men who came at me with guns during a territorial dispute 5 years ago. The third was... He stopped. Tell me. He hurt a child, one of my men's daughters. 14 years old, he was supposed to be collecting protection money, and he assaulted her instead. When my man came to me, I handled it. Maya's stomach churned. You killed him. I made sure he'd never hurt anyone again. That's all I'll say. She should have been horrified. Should have been running for the door. But all she could think about was that 14-year-old girl and how the law probably would have failed her, and how at least someone had made sure she was safe. Does that make you think differently of me? Jiho asked quietly. I don't know yet. Ask me again in a month. He pulled her closer, and she let him. They were both broken people, she realized, both trying to build something good from pieces that didn't quite fit right. Maybe that was enough. The call came at 3 in the morning, Jiho's phone vibrating insistently on Maya's nightstand. He answered in Korean, his voice immediately alert despite having been asleep seconds before. Maya watched his expression change, watched him go from sleepy to focused to furious in the space of a heartbeat. When? He said in English, for her benefit. How many? A pause. I'm coming now. He was already dressing, moving with practiced efficiency in the dark. I have to go. Minho's men just hit our warehouse in the West District. What does that mean? It means the quiet period is over. He's escalating. Jiho leaned down, kissing her. Quickly. Stay here. Keep the door locked. Don't open it for anyone except me or Sungmin. Jiho, I'll call you as soon as I can. And then he was gone, the apartment feeling suddenly too empty, too quiet. Maya couldn't sleep after that. She lay awake watching the ceiling and wondering what was happening in the West District, what violence was unfolding while she was safe in her bed. She thought about that 14-year-old girl, about all the people who existed in the spaces between law and chaos, about whether loving someone like Jiho made her complicit in the violence he committed. Her phone buzzed at 5 a.m. A text from Jiho. I'm okay. Lost some product, but no one was hurt. Need to handle some things today. I'll call you later. Stay safe. She responded. You too. Be careful. But careful seemed like a meaningless word in his world. Maya went to work exhausted, moving through the day in a haze. Halmayoni came in around noon, and one look at Maya's face told her everything. He told you, Halmayoni said in Korean. About the warehouse? Yes. About his father. About what he does. Yes. Halmayoni studied her carefully. And you're still here. I'm still here. Good. That boy needs someone strong enough to see him clearly, and stay anyway. His father's greatest gift and greatest curse was teaching Jiho exactly what he was capable of. But he never taught him that he could be something else. What if I can't change him? What if he's exactly what he appears to be, a violent man in a violent world? Then you love him anyway, or you don't. But you don't try to change him. Halmayoni's eyes were fierce. Men like Jiho don't change because someone wants them to. They change because they want to. All you can do is decide if you can love him as he is. The words settled over Maya like a weight. Could she love Jiho as he was? Could she accept the violence as part of the package? The necessary darkness that came with the light? She didn't. No yet, but she was still here, still choosing him every morning when she woke up. That had to mean something. Jiho didn't call that day, or the next. On the third day, Maya was starting to panic when Sungmin showed up at the bookstore. "He's fine," Sungmin said immediately, seeing her face. "But he asked me to give you this." He handed her a letter. Actual paper, actual handwriting, unexpectedly old-fashioned. Maya opened it carefully. "Maya, I'm sorry I haven't called. Things are moving faster than I expected with Minho. He's making plays for our territory, and I need to respond carefully. I don't want to bring this violence into your life more than I already have, but I also don't want to shut you out, so I'm telling you the truth. It's going to get worse before it gets better. If you need space, I understand. If you need to walk away, I'll let you. But if you choose to stay, know that I'm doing everything I can to keep you safe. You're not bait. You're not a weakness. You're the reason I want to survive this. J." Maya read it 3 times, then looked up at Sungmin. "Is he in danger?" "We're all in danger, that's the job." Sungmin's expression was neutral, but she saw the concern underneath. "But boss is smart. Smarter than Minho. He'll win this." "And if he doesn't, then you'll be protected regardless. Boss made sure of that. You're under our protection whether he survives or not." The casualness with which Sungmin discussed Jiho's potential death made Maya's stomach turn. "I need to see him." "That's not a good idea right now." "I don't care. Where is he?" Sungmin studied her for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "He's at a meeting, neutral ground, settling things with Minho. It should be safe, but take me there. Miss Williams, Maya, and I'm not asking." Something that might have been respect flickered across Sungmin's face. "Okay, but you stay in the car. You don't get out. You don't intervene. You just watch. Agreed?" "Agreed." The meeting was in an abandoned factory in the industrial district, the same area where they'd had their walk along the river a week ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. Sungmin parked 2 blocks away with a clear sight line to the factory entrance. "They're inside," he said. "Boss, Minho, they're top people, working out terms." "What kind of terms?" "Territory splits, mostly. Minho wants the West District. Boss is willing to give up some of it to avoid more violence." "That doesn't sound like winning." "Depends on how you define winning. Sometimes survival is victory enough." They waited. Maya watched men come and go from the factory, all of them armed, all of them moving with the careful awareness of people used to violence. This was Jiho's world, not fancy restaurants and sweet texts, but this, armed negotiations in abandoned factories, the constant threat of betrayal and death. Then she saw him, Jiho emerging from the factory with 2 men flanking him. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the controlled way he moved. He was scanning the area automatically, looking for threats, and his eyes passed right over their car without recognition. "He doesn't know we're here," Maya said. "He's focused. That's good. Means the meeting went okay." But something felt wrong. Maya couldn't articulate it, just a sick feeling in her stomach that had nothing to do with nerves. She watched as Jiho's men got into their car, watched as Jiho himself opened the back door and, "Get down!" Sungmin shouted, pushing Maya's head below the dashboard. Gunfire erupted, the distinctive crack of automatic weapons, the sound of glass shattering, men shouting. Maya's ears were ringing, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. Sungmin was on his phone, barking orders in rapid Korean, and she could hear more gunfire, closer now. "Stay down," he ordered. Then he was out of the car, gun drawn, moving toward the chaos. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could hear was gunfire, and all she could think was that Jiho was in the middle of it. The man she'd chosen, the man she was falling in love with despite every rational objection, might be dying while she cowered in a car 2 blocks away. She lifted her head slightly, peering over the dashboard. Through the smoke and chaos, she saw bodies on the ground. saw men in suits returning fire from behind cars, saw Jiho standing, alive, his suit jacket torn, blood on his face, but standing. He was directing his men with quick gestures, moving with deadly efficiency. This wasn't the nervous man who'd asked her to be his Valentine. This wasn't even the cold enforcer who'd slammed Derek against a wall. This was something else entirely. A man completely in his element, comfortable with violence in a way that should have terrified her. It did terrify her, but she couldn't look away. The gunfire stopped, as suddenly as it had started. Minho's men were retreating, leaving bodies behind. Jiho was checking his people, and Maya saw him kneel beside someone who wasn't moving. Saw the way his shoulders sagged slightly, the only crack in his composure. Sungmin was running back to the car. "We need to go, now." He's fine, but we need to move before the police arrive." They drove in silence, taking side streets and moving fast. Maya's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Who was he kneeling by?" "One of our men, Kim Jae-sung. He's dead." The words landed like a physical blow. Someone had died. Not an abstract concept, not a news story, but an actual person who'd been alive an hour ago and now wasn't. Because of territory disputes and masculine pride and violence that perpetuated itself endlessly. "This is my fault," Maya whispered. "No. This is Minho's fault, and it's the fault of a system that's been in place long before you arrived." Sungmin's voice was surprisingly gentle. "But if you're looking for a reason to leave, Miss Williams, this would be a good one. Boss would understand. He might even be relieved." Would he? Maya didn't know anymore. She didn't know anything except that she was in way over her head and sinking fast. Her phone rang. Jiho. "Maya," his voice was rough, exhausted. "Sungmin told me he took you there. I'm sorry you had to see that." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, couple of cuts, nothing serious, but we lost Jae-sung." "I'm so sorry." Silence on the line. Then, "I need to handle some things. Make sure his family is taken care of, manage the police situation. Can I see you tomorrow?" "Yes, of course. Whatever you need." "What I need is you, but I'll settle for tomorrow." A pause. "Maya? If you want to end this, I'll understand. I know this is more than you signed up for." She thought about it. Really thought about it. About the gunfire and the blood and the violence. About Kim Jae-sung, who died defending territory that probably didn't matter. About Jiho kneeling beside his body and the weight of command that meant sending people into danger. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said firmly. "We'll talk then." Because she needed to see him in person. Needed to look in his eyes and decide if this was survivable, or if she was just being stubborn, mistaking adrenaline for love. But she didn't end it. Not yet. And that decision felt as significant as saying yes to being his Valentine had been. Maybe more so. The next evening, Jiho came to her apartment looking exhausted. He had a cut above his left eyebrow that had been stitched, and his movements were careful in a way that suggested bruised ribs. Maya let him in without a word, and made him sit while she brewed tea. "You were there yesterday," Jiho said quietly. "You saw it." "Yes. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing." Maya handed him tea and sat across from him, needing the distance. "Just tell me what happened. All of it." So he did. The meeting had been going well, terms nearly settled, when Minho's men had opened fire without warning, a betrayal of neutral ground, of the rules that supposedly governed their world. 3 of Minho's men were dead, along with Kim Jae-sung. The police were investigating but wouldn't find anything. Both organizations were too good at disappearing evidence. "What happens now?" Maya asked. "Now it's war. Real war, not this careful dance we've been doing. Minho broke the rules. He can't be negotiated with, can't be trusted. So we end it. How? I don't know yet. But carefully, minimizing casualties, protecting our people." He looked at her, and his eyes were ancient with weariness. "And protecting you, which is why I think you should leave Seoul for a while. Go stay with Sarah in New York, or visit your parents. Somewhere Minho can't reach you." "No." "Maya, I said no, we're partners, remember? You don't get to send me away for my own good. That's making decisions for me. This is different. This is your life. My choice. She moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. I'm not saying I'm going to be in the middle of it. I'm not stupid, but I'm also not running away the second things get hard. If I do that, what does that say? That I only want you when it's safe and easy? That's not love, Jiho. That's cowardice. It's not cowardice to want to survive. It's also not love to only show up for the good parts. She squeezed his hand. I'm scared. Terrified, actually. But I'm staying. You're stuck with me. For the first time that evening, Jiho smiled. Stuck with you, I can live with that. They sat together in silence, drinking tea and not talking about violence, or territory or death. Just existing in the same space, finding comfort in proximity. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. Somewhere, Park Min-ho was planning his next move. Somewhere, Jiho's men were preparing for war. Somewhere, the consequences of violence rippled outward, touching lives that would never know why they'd been disrupted. But in Maya's small apartment, with cheap tea and comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other against all logic held hands and pretended, just for a moment, that the world was simple. It wasn't, but the pretending was necessary for survival, and they were both very good at surviving.